The Rusakov Municipal Workers' Union Club by architect Konstantin Melnikov, known as the Cogwheel House, is one of the most unusual structures in Moscow. Recognized as a world masterpiece of avant-garde architecture, the building dates from the period when, in the first 3 decades of the 20th century, Russian and Soviet art played a leading role in the international artistic process. The avant-garde in architecture developed in diverse directions: constructivism, rationalism, and functionalism. Architects of all these tendencies actively sought new shapes and technologies with the use of concrete, metal, and glass, and most importantly, looked for a design that would adequately comply with architectural needs of the new society. Melnikov's building on Strominka Street in Sokolniki represents an entirely new type of architectural structure that appeared in the Soviet Union, the Workers' Club. In the 1920s, clubs became more than leisure facilities, also becoming important centers for organization of the new life. For this reason, the ruling powers awarded them special attention. In 1925, some 3,500 clubs were recorded in the young land of the Soviets, all in old mansions and converted churches, whose architecture contradicted the club's purpose. The crucial decision to build permanent new clubs was taken in 1925 at the 7th All-Union Conference of the Metalworkers' Union. These buildings were to be financed from the monthly 10% membership dues paid to union funds. Resolutions on the building of clubs were also taken by the labor unions of various other sectors. A boom in the construction of workers' clubs began. Over the next few years, 78 club projects were devised for Moscow and the Moscow region, of which 30 were implemented. 6 of them were created by the architect Konstantin Melnikov. Konstantin Stepanovich Melnikov was one of the leaders of the Soviet avant-garde and already internationally recognized by the mid-1920s. The architect's success resulted from 2 exhibition pavilions: the Makorka at the All-Russian Agricultural and Handicraft Industries Exhibition in Moscow and the USSR Pavilion at the International Exposition of Modern Industrial and Decorative Arts in Paris, which was awarded the Grand Prix of the jury. In the second half of the 1920s, Melnikov became one of the most popular architects in the new Russia. When commissioned to build the Rusakov Club in 1927, Melnikov proposed a quite extraordinary shape for it. Since the structure was built for workers at the Sokolniki tram park and car maintenance workshops, Melnikov selected the form of a cogwheel as the basic architectural motif. The architect placed agitation information compositions on the butt ends of external consoles, forming the cogwheel teeth, creating the additional image of a club mouthpiece. "I designed the club buildings not simply as buildings," the architect wrote. "I compiled a project for future happiness, a project for the architecture of a great upsurge in building the new life." The side of the club facing Babaevskaya Street also boasts an original design consisting of rectangular and wedge-shaped prisms placed on top of one another. The rhythm of large factory-type windows is similar to the architecture of tram depots. In the plan, the Rusakov Club takes the form of a wedge as dictated by the triangular plot allocated for the building on the corner of Strominka and Babaevskaya Streets. The main requirements for internal organization of the clubs provided for the possibility of expanding the space, the conversion of separate areas, equipment of the main auditorium and smaller auditorium for conferences, lectures and film shows, equipment of the halls for club and group meetings, a buffet canteen, recreation room, and games room. The plans and cross-section blueprints show that Melnikov envisaged a gymnasium with shower rooms and toilets, a cloakroom, public areas, a reading room, and cinema projection booth in the Rusakov Club. Beyond the stalls, the club's main auditorium fanned into 3 additional halls, which also formed the cantilevered cogwheel teeth. Each of these 3 small spaces could be transformed into an isolated hall for 190 people at 3rd floor level. Another 2 separable spaces at the level of the second floor had a seating capacity of 120, and these too could become isolated rooms due to a system of living walls. The Rusakova Club therefore has an arrangement of 6 auditoriums which can be combined, if necessary, into one hall, with a seating capacity of up to 1,170. Utilizing all the technologies and materials available at the time, Melnikov dared to violate all the classical architectural canons, not for the sake of originality, but for the maximum rational use of space. Striving to obtain the maximally useful internal volume, the architect reduced to a minimum the areas allotted to technical facilities and internal communications. For example, here, as in the subsequent clubs, there is active exploitation of external staircases, which became a characteristic of Melnikov's designs. Another striking innovation in the Rusakova Club was the consoled balconies amphitheatres extruding at third-floor height. Unsurprisingly, this idea of Melnikov's was sharply criticized, not by those commissioning the project, but by professional colleagues and builders, many of whom refused to work on the project, believing that construction of a building with such spacious volumes on cantilevers was technically impossible. Melnikov began considering the idea of cantilevered construction using a system of oblique balance even before the clubs were built. In 1925, the architect received a commission in Paris to design a taxi garage. In one version, the taxi garage park above the Seine bridges, Melnikov planned a structure with the minimum of vertical supports, which are maintained on the principle of cantilevered suspension and the balance between interlinking systems of oblique supports. The project was never implemented, but this innovatory engineering idea was continued in the Rusakova Club. As a whole, the club building is constructed from several materials: brick supporting walls, breeze block walls, metallic truss ceilings, and external cantilevers with reinforced concrete bracing. The roofing has been simplified to the maximum and consists of a wooden rafter construction. Architect Konstantin Melnikov's Rusakova Club partly lost its original structure and layout due to numerous alterations and restorations from the 1970s to 1990s. The last restoration, completed in 2015, to some extent corrected the situation, but the architect's original concept has not been fully recreated. Today, the Rusakova Club houses the Roman Viktiuk Theatre, and the club has therefore been returned to Muscovites in a form true to its original purpose, as an experimental centre for special events and performances.